there's nothing like cracking that cellophane and pulling that record out. It just smells great.
Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Non-stop hardcore energy.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
Unlike any other.
With your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. The Bod Father.
Man, this stuff rocks.
Hi, this is Chris.
And this is Jack from Ronin.
And you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
And you better listen again.
The views and opinions of the guests do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of BODS Mayhem Radio Network, its staff, affiliates, or sponsors. Parental discretion is advised. Welcome to BODS Mayhem Radio Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I am your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. The Bod Father, and as always, I'm bringing you guys and gals awesome interviews. Today, it's a huge honor and privilege to welcome Mr. Chris Feldmann. He's the vocals and rhythm guitarist, and Jack Mauro, lead guitarist of Ronin. Ronin has released their single Temptress off of their self-titled debut album, which is out now. So, Chris and Jack, how you doing, guys?
Hey, good. How you?
Thanks for having us.
Doing awesome. Glad to have you guys on the show. And how excited are you to hopefully get out on the road and do some shows, do some local shows as well? How excited are you guys?
Very much excited.
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, this last year has been pretty rough not being able to play.
We were at a point where we were like getting shows, 2 or 3 a month at least, and it was really heating up. We had a lot planned before COVID hit. Like how many shows did we have to cancel?
We canceled, it was like 11 shows.
Oh, wow.
Almost a dozen shows.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's crazy.
And we had to give up yeah.
It sucked. But, we're hoping that we'll be able to bounce back with stuff starting to open, especially up here by us in New York.
See, that's what I've been saying for all the bands that have been around, for a while and just are now hitting their stride of getting some backing from record labels and things like that. This is kind of a big setback. It's kind of like where do we start now? Do we start all over again, or where do we pick up off at? You know what I'm saying? Because God forbid, COVID hit all of us hard, and I wish none of us had to go through this. But this is kind of like a start all over again in a way.
Oh, absolutely. And we were already at square one anyway, so now we're back at square one.
yeah, like we just got off the starting block. And they're like, all right, we got to start over. Start the race over, reload the gun. Yeah, it's rough. It's a system reset, and we're just hoping that when we reboot it, we're running better than ever.
Did you guys find yourself doing anything differently other than working on music, such as like collecting or catching up on anything at all whatsoever?
Well, I guess the silver lining was it gave us more time to record our debut album because we didn't know exactly how long we were going to take to record it while we were doing gigs because it all kind of started at the same time. Our first session was in February of 2020, and about a month later, everything shut down. But at that time, we were starting to get, like Jack was saying, 2 to 3 gigs a month. I think May we had 5 gigs, and who knows how much time we would have had to put into the studio, and maybe the album wouldn't even be out right now. So instead of doing that, we were able to kind of sneak into the studio a few dates, one at a time, during COVID, and then, in the summer we were able to wrap it up. So in some ways it was a silver lining that we were able to finish the album, but our live gigs suffered as a result.
And it's hard to really jump into anything else when, we released the album. We were so excited that it was out, that we had something, that we could go to a show and be like, hey, listen to us after the show because now we actually have something out. And, usually when a band releases an album, they go out and they promote it and they play it hard for like a year. And then they start looking into other things and they start thinking of new songs and stuff. But we haven't even had a chance to like play it live for anybody yet. So that's like, do we start just writing the next one now? Or, it's hard to think of anything else but the music.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because like I said, it's like, do we wait and just tour on this album, or do we continue to write on another one? Because I'm really anxious to see what some bands are doing right now, because I know some bands I've interviewed, they've got tons of music, at least for 2 to 3 albums down the road. I'm like, oh my God, that's insane.
Damn. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's tough because if you write all that stuff now, by the time you get around to recording it, it's like maybe you don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
Or then, you know, what do you do? Do you record the stuff that you liked at that time or the stuff that you liked back then? I mean, kind of like, which child are you going to give up type thing? Which one don't you like?
These songs on this debut album, are these songs that were previously written prior to you releasing this, or were these all brand new songs from Ronin?
I think the only one that was written before Ronin was formed was Down. Down, actually, Chris wrote that when we were in a different band called Bad Larry. That went nowhere, and you'll never hear of it, and you'll never find it online. But he wrote that one there, and then when I came on board, we were starting to work on the album, and suddenly it just popped in my head one day, and I was like, yeah, you remember that one? Let's do that. And Chris went home that night and reworked it from a folk song into this rock ballad, and it just came out great.
Yeah, he came up to me at rehearsal. He goes, "Remember that song Down?" I was like, "I think so. Pretty. Yeah. Well, what about it?" He goes, "Yeah. Why don't you play it on electric guitar, and then send it to me?" I'm like, all right. So I just went home, and I had time in my hands, so I did it. And he's like, "That's exactly what I had in my head," and it turned out to be like one of our more popular songs, even among the band members. Like, I'm pretty sure it's Maas's, our drummer, his favorite song. He says the ending makes him feel like he's floating on a cloud. But other than that song, like, I had some of the riffs, like we had some lyrics and stuff, but like maybe we went into this album with about 12 songs, and we decided to choose like the 8 that we thought were the best collection of what we had at the time and what represented what we're kind of going for as a sound.
And I mean, don't get us wrong. We wanted to give the other 4 too. It's just eventually money came in.
Yeah, money always plays a factor when you're unsigned. And it's like, all right, how much can we throw at this album right now with studio time? And when we were pretty good in the studio as far as sticking to time, and we wanted to try to get it done in under 100 hours, and I think it was like 101 hours total. And that one last session was just sort of throwing in a few extra things, just because we had time.
And also that means there's good news, which is that we already know we have a good solid 4 songs on the next album.
Very true.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. These songs that didn't make it, are they going to end up on another album or an EP down the road? So there you go. Always have extras when you can.
Yeah, I think it's like something we learned from like bands that we really love is you always hear them say, it's like, oh, we went into the studio with 15 song ideas, but there's only 11 songs on the album. So, you kind of try to at least be good at like self-editing or being as objective as you possibly can with your own music to be like, all right, this song's a little bit better than this one. And the 4 that we have left over, like we're happy with, but there's definitely things we could rework and make better when we can spend more time on them for a potential next batch.
Yeah, and I think also, maybe they'll be on the next album, maybe not. I think a lot of your development as a band comes from once you start touring with an album. And I mean, who knows, after we play every song on the album ad nauseum and we don't want them and we don't want to play them anymore, then maybe that might lead to a different discovery of sound that, advances us even further. So, I mean, not ruling anything out.
So were you guys a little nervous releasing this debut album right now, since you can't tour or really do much of nothing other than do some live streaming events?
What were we thinking?
Right. I mean, we were definitely a little nervous, but I think we were more anxious and antsy than we were nervous, and that sort of like outruled it. Where we were like, we have it. We hadn't done anything in so long. We're like, why would we sit on this? I'm like, let's at least get it out there. Maybe we can gain some traction. Some people in like little pockets of cities, maybe they start to really love us, and then we can go there and have like a really good show. And hopefully, maybe through touring, we get even more people who like the album. So it's sort of just because we had it and nothing was happening, and we're like, we just got to put this thing out.
And you got to remember also, we had been working consistently and quite hard as a band for a good 2 years before COVID. And throughout all those, I mean, we probably played upwards of 70 shows in 2 years, and like it just felt like we didn't have anything to give out. We kept getting bands who loved us backstage and who kept inviting us to do more shows with them. And we kept doing all these different shows, and we had nothing to show for it afterwards. We had no way to build a fan base. We didn't really have anything online except for a really, really low quality EP that we have since put into that
scrap
the Raiders of the Lost Ark,
that, Area 51.
That won't be seen unless we become like Hall of Fame.
Yeah, we got top men on that.
And I mean, like, so we needed something out so that once COVID's over, we could hit the ground running and we didn't have to wait and record something, and we could have something out for the public.
Ever since the whole digital thing, it's like you have to stay relevant. You have to keep putting stuff out there, regardless if it's just singles every 3 to 4 months. But it's just sad how the mystique has left for bands and stuff, where you had to go and check out a magazine at a store to figure out what your band was doing. You know what I'm saying? Now it's just right at your fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And we toured with the idea of doing, proper singles leading up to the album release. And I think because it was our first one, we're like, you know what? If someone hears one song, they're going to want to see what else we have. And since there's nothing else, I'm like, let's at least just offer them what we've got right now on a full palette. So if they do listen to a song like Temptress, they're like, oh, man, we got to go check out the rest of this band. We want to have something for them to digest. And maybe with the next album, we'll do like 2 or 3 singles leading up and then the full album drop. Because we still like the idea of the full album. Whether it's 8 songs or 10 songs, we like that idea. As far as just releasing a single on its own, unrelated to any other songs, will we not do it? I can't say whether we will or not, but I think right now our plan is to try to put out another proper album.
Yeah,
follow up.
There's nothing wrong with a single, but an album is a very classic thing. We are very 90s driven. Like that was the time that we grew up and the time that our musical tastes were formed. And we are the kind of people who are used to a band comes out with a full album.
Yeah.
And I think we try and stick to that.
What's impressed the both of you or excited you the most about making the debut album, if anything? What sticks out the most for the both of you?
For me, it's I feel like seeing how the songs really transformed from our storage unit where we rehearsed to what it became in the studio. And each step of the process, us recording the drums, doing full band takes, and being like, oh, that sounded pretty good in the studio what we just played. And then once the drums were done, going in to record the bass for a song, listening to the bass. And then once that was processed, doing guitars, vocals, and then having the rough mixes, and just seeing each step of the process, the songs just sounding better and better, and, getting what we thought we were going to get, and then going beyond that, I think was the coolest surprise for me personally, was just being like, we knew what to expect to an extent, but I think we overshot that and succeeded in ways we didn't think were actually possible.
Yeah, for me, I think it's really hard when you're in a band and when you're playing on a stage. It's really hard to hear everything at once. You're really focused on what you're doing. You have to be, especially if it's really, really loud in the room. And this doubly for when we're in, we used to have a storage shed, and that was where we did all of our rehearsals. And so you can't hear anything beyond yourself. And then when you listen back on the recording, it's like damn, oh, Maas really did a great job on that intro of Donnie. And it's like, yeah, when I'm on stage, I can hear it, but it's like once you're sitting there and it's being played for you, that's really the thing. It's once you put yourself into the place of the audience that becomes really impressive, because you don't really see the sum of the whole while you're in the thick of it.
Yeah, especially when you're in that garage unit like that, like you're talking about, storage unit. It's like everything's so muffled. It's like, well, when you get to start to, process everything, it's like, so that does sound really good that way.
Yeah, and again, we had some sort of an idea, but again, it was a 10 by 10 sheet metal building.
Oh, wow.
Not the best acoustics. We're not acoustic experts, but I think anyone you would ask say it's not ideal for hearing nuances.
When he hit the bass drum, the walls would shake and sound like cymbals on their own.
Yeah, and then it would reach a point in rehearsal, like after the second or third song, where everything was just sounded exactly the same. My ears just couldn't adjust any further. So like we're very fortunate now to be on the other side of that and seeing like, oh wow, we created some pretty cool stuff in a not so ideal situation, and it makes you feel like a good sense of accomplishment, especially with people that we know personally. I think when you know someone who's in a band or like doing something that is on like a small level, you don't really take it as seriously. And I think something that we have a point of pride is a lot of people we know were like pretty blown away just with the production value. They're like, oh wow, you guys are actually like, this is a serious thing. It's not just like a joke. Like, oh, they're just doing this for fun. It's like, yeah, it is fun, but like we take it very seriously. And I think that was at least a chip on the shoulder. Like, we're going to show the people that we know that we're very serious about this and, like, we're legitimate.
Any tracks standing out more to you than any right now on the album? I know it must change every time that you guys listen to it or you talk about it, because I know these are your guys' babies. But do you both have any tracks that stand out possibly?
For me, I think Down became just a completely different song once we got into the studio. It never sounded like that. I mean, we don't have a chorus when we're live, so we can't get the ending to sound exactly like that. But I mean, like when it does that change from like a hard rock to almost like a
Allman Brothers, just with like Queen style harmonies. It just
it feels so different and good, and also. Into the Narrows turned into one of my favorite tracks on the album. I think that's a real sleeper for us, and it's my personal favorite because just the sound effects that we have going in it are so like they're subtle, but they work so well to give you this imagery of like drowning.
Yeah, that one's very cool because, and like Jack said, to me it does feel like a sleeper. It's the album closer. So, those are almost always like the least appreciated on an album. But like you said, they're all our babies. But that one definitely feels like a good sense of accomplishment going in because whenever we rehearsed it and stuff, it's like we said, it's hard to hear. And that one really started to shine on the recording. And I mean, I always love the intro to One and the Same. I just think it's like a really beautiful, like orchestral sort of build up to like this sort of like hard-hitting thrashy song that it turns into, and it's sort of like that classic 80s, 90s long intro. I think it's like 2 minutes and 14 seconds before there's any vocals, and it's you just hope the people stay tuned in, they stay locked in, and things I think changed enough during that time to keep people invested. So the One and the Same, which is the opener, and Into the Narrow, I think stand out the most for me, at least right now. Like tomorrow, maybe it'll be Donnie.
Was there a song that you guys were working on that totally ended up sounding different than intended to, possibly?
Well, let's see. One and the Same is pretty much exactly how we played it on stage. Same goes for Greetings and Coming Through.
I feel like maybe Spider. Spider was one that we weren't as high on going in, and then once we were in the studio with it and we kept adding each instrument, I think that one transformed, and that was the song that we pushed hardest first after we dropped the album. That one became like, we think this is going to be a pretty big hit and a fan favorite. So I think my answer, would be Spider.
I think I would go the second half of Temptress because we have never been, we don't have the bodies to do as many voices as are on the end of that track, and it's fun. It kind of reminds me a little of that, like, ooga chaka, ooga, it's got that little bit of a, it's not necessarily silly, but it's not really taking itself that seriously.
Right. The album was engineered and produced by Frank Matera, I should say. I hope I got that right. And mixed by Mike Watts.
Yeah.
How was working with these gentlemen?
Oh, Frank is a dear. He is the greatest guy in sound that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. Like, the moment you tell him you know, you can hum something for him and he immediately gets on the same wavelength as you. And he's like, oh, you want it to sound like this. And then he pulls, you know, because we don't really know that much about the technical aspect of recording. And he just pulls out amps and sounds and pedals, you know, like crazy.
Yeah, he was very instrumental, you know, no pun intended, but in getting us to a point where we felt confident in our playing because we had a good sound. And he got right on board with us when we had like our first meeting at the studio when we decided that we were going to go with that. And he got what we were trying to go for. And that was very important because this was our maiden voyage really in like a professional studio situation. It could have went south very easily if we had someone who wasn't welcoming and just cold and like, no, this is your album, you guys tell me everything. Like, I'm not going to give you. He was so generous with just ideas and be like, oh, instead of this part, maybe the whole band locks up instead of you guys keep playing this part in the drums. And we would try it. I'm like, you know what? That sounds so much better. He just has a great ear for it. He's very knowledgeable with music. And like Jack was saying, just with the amps and pedals, like I went out, when we first had our meeting and we did the first set of drum tracks. So the whole band was just doing scratch tracks while Maas was recording his drums. And I told him like what sound I was going for. I'm like, I'm going for like a mid-90s. And I used like Hetfield from the Load albums, like his sort of like dirty guitar sound. And he's like, if you want to go for that, he's like, you want a Mesa dual rectifier. And I went out, I literally ordered one from Guitar Center. I used one. It came from Ohio. And when I recorded my guitar, he's like, give me that baby. And he looked like a kid in a candy store when I showed it to him. And he's, you know, fotzing around with all the knobs. And, you know, I have no idea. I literally never plugged the thing in until I was in the studio. And he got a sound and I strummed the chord. And I was like, you know, man, that was literally exactly the sound that I was envisioning. So then he was amazing.
Do you think Frank might have got something out of you guys that someone else may not have gotten possibly during this recording session and producing this album for you guys?
I know exactly what he got that no one else would have given him. That's Chick-fil-A. We went out there every time we went in the recording session, and we brought that man chicken, and it shows in the album.
It's very true. Yeah, Chick-fil-A was a constant, except when we recorded on Sunday because they're closed on Sunday. That was always it was always a different feeling in the studio.
It was, yeah,
when we couldn't have Chick-fil-A. But I think if that's how you meant it, or if you meant like what he actually got out of us, which could be a whole different interpretation. But I think because he was so warm and welcoming, and he got, you know, what we were going for with our style and sound and our attitude, I think we were able to really play our best. And like we were saying about the money thing, like money's always a factor. You know, we're just four regular guys. Like none of us are independently wealthy. There's not an endless supply of cash, and to go into the studio and pay X amount of dollars per hour, it's daunting. And he just really lightened the load and didn't make us feel too much pressure. And I think that lack of feeling pressure opened us up, and we played better than I think we've ever played. Yeah, I think it's a funny story about Frank. When we first started recording with him, we would play a take, and you know, maybe it wasn't as good as it could have been, you know, and he would just look at us and be like, well, do you want to take another take? And we were like, yeah, sure. And he'd be like, you know, thanks. And we were like, what do you mean, thanks?
What do you mean, thanks? Like, we want it to sound good. If you think it needs another take, please tell us. But he was like that kind of polite. Like, he wanted us to have final say in things. And like at one point he was like, even like, I am so glad that you guys are okay with spending a little bit more time and you know, taking a second take if it's not perfect, because, you know, it blew our minds. We were like, what? Why would someone come in and play a subpar take and then go, all right, that's it, I'm done, I'm out?
Right, because he even mentioned not everybody's open to ideas from the engineer. Like, when he would give us an idea of like, maybe a vocal pattern, or, you know, instead of doing the riff this way, maybe only repeat it 3 times instead of 4. And we'd be like, all right, let's give it a shot. And we would try it, and he was just, like, sometimes he seemed genuinely surprised that we were so agreeable to try stuff out. And I think, you know, he's in that position for a reason. He's good at his job, so why not at least give it a shot? If it doesn't work, we just go back to what we were doing. You really, there's nothing to lose.
Yep, you're exactly right. And a lot of bands, they'll do that. They'll come in this and say, this is exactly what we're looking for, bang it out and done and gone. And, you know, and that happens, unfortunately.
Yeah, you got to remember that like it's the equivalent of painting on a canvas, and when you're in the studio, that's when you're actually putting it down on the canvas, and maybe something in the moment is going to change from what you first envisioned, but in the end, it's all part of the art.
Yeah, there's got to be some spontaneity, like improvisation, that plays a factor, because, you know, throwing the word art around like sometimes can feel like pretentious, but it's a creative process, and sometimes, you know, recording is part of the process. But you don't stop being creative just because you're in the recording stage.
You guys worked with Jack Linehan. He did the artwork for the album. How was working with him to get exactly what you wanted on this artwork for the album?
Well, he's great, and funny story about him is when we first started jamming, me and Vitale, the bassist, back in 2016, when we started to get a little more serious later that year in the beginning of 2017, he met this kid, Jack. And he played drums. So we're like, oh, do you want to come and jam with us? And he jammed with us for like the better part of a year. But then he wanted to take his art stuff more seriously. So we parted ways and we brought in Maas. But we still maintain that like friendly relationship with him, and he's still good friends with Vitale. And we knew he did art. So he did the artwork for our self-recorded EP that shall not be named. And we really liked the style of his artwork. So, you know, we employed him again. And we're like, you know, we want to pay you for your art because we really like it, and, you know, you're a friend. So, you know, what can you do for us? We gave him like a rough idea of what we wanted once we decided that it was going to be self-titled. And I think, you know, the finished product we're really proud of.
I mean, really, what the album cover was, the only note that we had to give him when we first got it was more like cherry blossom petals falling. Otherwise, what you see was the first draft, and it was just exactly what we wanted.
Yeah, he like the skeleton was there, and he just fine-tuned it. He just, you know, HD'd it, so to speak.
I always like to give the artist a little nod on these interviews because they don't even get mentioned half the time during these interviews, and that's pretty sad, actually.
Yeah, no, I'm sure he appreciates it. I certainly do, and because it's an important part.
And that's the whole thing. That album cover tells a story to make you want to grab that album and take it home.
Yeah, it's got to catch someone's eye. It's got to be someone interesting, and like while we were sort of developing the idea, and once we saw it, we sort of got new interpretations of what it meant. You know, he's the samurai, the Ronin, has arrows in him, and it's almost like a metaphor for rock music, where rock music has been wounded. It's been, you know, it's down, but he's not giving up. He's taking his sword out. He's fighting his way back. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring rock music back to the masses. We're trying to get rock music back into the culture. And, you know, we're small time, but we're trying to do our small part to sort of help spur the revolution again, you know, because rock music is important. And there's more to the mainstream than just like generic nonsense. And we believe that we have something to say, and we believe that people will connect with it.
And there's something about a band playing everything live with none of this pre-recorded stuff. You know, that's what we want to do, and that's what we want to see more of. And you know, it's like sometimes when you're looking at, you know, a situation that you see and you don't like, and you're like, oh, more people should do this. You know, sometimes you just got to pick up the axe and grind it out yourself.
Do you see the band guys still musically growing and still hungry, wanting more for this band?
Oh, we're starving.
Yeah, we are famished, for lack of a better term. Like I'm chomping at the bit. I really want to play gigs, and you know, we hooked up with Pavement to push Temptress, and we're hoping that their relationship grows and we can get on maybe a couple of bigger shows and some festivals and start a tour and just get out there, because this is what we want to do. This is what we want our, you know, quote unquote 9 to 5 to be. This is what we want to put all our effort and time into, and
it's what we've been putting a lot of our effort and time into. We're ready to hit the ground running as soon as King Cuomo tells us that we can.
Right? Yeah, it's really any spare moment or spare dollar really put back into this band, and you know, the four of us has done a very good job of being dedicated to it, and I think the album is proof of that, and we're just hoping we can support the album with, the dedication and shows that it actually deserves.
What do you guys hope everyone takes away, or message you hope they hear while listening to any of Ronin's music in general? What do you hope they get from when they start to listen to it?
Well, I hope that if it can connect with anybody, then I hope that it does. I hope that, if you hear a song that can move you in some way, I hope that you could take the whole album with you and listen to it every single day, at least once a day. Please listen to it at least once a day.
For me personally, and I think the band agrees to a point, the connection is the biggest part for me, just with music, because I think about how I feel, or I felt when I first heard a song or a band, and fell in love with it, and maybe it was a lyric or just a guitar riff that sort of made me make like an ugly face and be like, man, that's a dirty riff. And just, whether you're feeling anger, sadness, or just feeling happy just at the sound of a guitar or a drum beat, I just think that's really what I would love for just someone to get out of it. And sometimes I feel like that gets lost on artists. It's, they're making music and it's like, you kind of want to make money and you just want to be able to support yourself. But I think connecting with people is very undervalued. And in music, people say it's the universal language. Mm-hmm. The easiest thing to understand across cultures. That's why I feel like heavy music is so big in South and Latin America. They love that music because it's just the language of life. You feel it. You feel rock music. And most of all, I hope that's what people who listen to Ronin feel, whether it's one of our lyrics or maybe it's only one song that they get from us. But if they can latch onto that and hold on to it, then, I would be more than happy.
Now, I know you guys had a lot of music growing up and a lot of albums. Was there an album that you had to have and listen to it every other week or every day, or a song possibly, that affected you as far as giving you inspiration or just let you escape? If so, what album was that, or song possibly?
The first album that I can remember really loving and that sort of launched me into the world of music that I became to love, which is like more heavier music and like rock, was, oddly enough, it was Creed, the album Human Clay. I remember my Aunt Diane had it on cassette, and me and my cousin Rich would listen to it over and over again inside her Chevy Lumina. And I can remember it like anytime I hear a song or a riff from that album, I can get transported right back there. But a song that I can remember really escaping the first time I heard it was No Leaf Clover, Metallica, the first S&M. Mm-hmm. And I can remember, I think I heard it maybe I was like 10 or 11. And just something about the song. I didn't see it with the video. I just heard the audio. And just with the orchestra and the whole arrangement, it was just like this beautiful, epic piece. And I just remember thinking, what the hell is this? Like, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Like, it's so beautiful, and the band was so powerful. And I think I was trying to read like Cliff Notes or something for like a 7th grade book. I forget what. I think maybe it was like Lord of the Flies or something. And I was reading some scene from it, and I was listening to the music, and that really just captured my imagination. And then that was it from there. I was off to the races.
My tastes are really, really eclectic. I honestly, I never even played hard rock or metal until I came on board Ronin. And I mean, I'm all in on it now. It's really most of what I listen to. But growing up, I was much more wide range. Like I listened to, I was in junior high school in the 90s, and I was listening to freaking 70s funk and, 80s punk rock. And I slowly worked my way up the decades until one day I hit Tom Waits. And he was really the guy who made me realize that I wanted to be a musician. And not just because he writes beautiful melodies, and he does if you can get past his gravelly, spider-ridden voice. But, like, it was really like I listened to him, and I was like, my God, if this man can work as an artist and make a living, I should be doing this. I have to be able to do this.
I listen to Tom Waits, man, and I instantly want to go grab a bottle of water and just chug it.
Right?
I mean, you're right. I mean, he has some phenomenal music, and it's beautiful, and it blows my mind on how powerful music can be for somebody. It's just explosive.
Right, and it's like you don't need to be a trained vocalist to become, a huge voice that's so influential.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's another sort of side effect of the whole COVID pandemic is, the loss of, arts and entertainment, everything being on pause, and how valuable that art and entertainment is for people when they're shut in their house for months at a time with nothing to do. How many people were like starved for television shows? How many people were like, oh, we need live stream concerts? And then hopefully when everything is back open, people, put their money where their mouth is and go to live shows, go to local shows, start seeing more movies, start going to concerts more, and really, support the arts that supported them when they were, down on their luck and shut in for months at a time.
I think when concerts get back going, I think it's going to be an explosion of people coming out to it. But, I hope that we don't have another surge of COVID. You know what I mean? I know they're talking about like shots and getting vaccinated, but that still doesn't guarantee nothing,
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, and that's why you start to wonder what is going to fill the gap, because eventually we are gonna like every season needs a new band. There's always some new band coming out every year, and it's like there really wasn't since 2020. We've been in this holding pattern, and we're still listening to the same music that we were listening in 2019, and we're still listening to the same artists. So it's like we are. I think society is ready for a new act, and we hope that we can be that act.
A lot of people are thirsty for new music, and like I said previously, I hope that there's a lot of new bands that come out because of this, that this gives them the kick in the ass to say, let's do it. You know what I mean? Because, like you said, we need some new faces, and that happens, and I agree. Chris and Jack, how can folks stay in touch with you guys? Buy some merchandise, tour dates, all this good stuff, this new debut album from you all. How can they do that?
Go to our website at ronin-band.com, where you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify. Our album's pretty much available anywhere that you can stream or buy music, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We have physical copies of the CDs with the album art.
Because like we said, we are throwbacks.
Yes, for sure. And we have a merch site on our website, ronin-band.com, and it'll have any potential tour dates, hopefully stuff in the tri-state area and beyond, if we're fortunate enough, and we can start to gain some traction.
And a fun part about Ronin is that we're not big yet, so we will actually talk to you if you hit us up on social media.
I try to respond to every single person, and I think all four of us love the interaction, good or bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one guy hated all the long intros, and we actually talked to him.
Yeah, we talked to him about it, and I think we won him over. He's like, try writing a song instead of an intro. I'm like, that's fine. Here's a song that starts right away. He was like, oh, that's a good one. I'm like, there you go.
Yeah, that interaction, man, is the key factor. That to me is what I respect about bands the most, that actually do that they actually give a damn about people who follow them or gives them a chance. That's the cool part.
Yeah, because if you want the people as fans, you got to give them some attention and shine as well.
Sure.
And well deserved. If they're going to spend their hard-earned money on your stuff,
yeah,
you could at least give them the time of day.
That's exactly right. Chris and Jack, would you care to do a promo for my show before I let you go?
Sure.
Hi, this is Chris.
And this is Jack from Ronin.
And you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
And you better listen again.
Everybody stick around. We got some great stuff coming up, and you only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour and BODS Mayhem Hour Podcast. Please get out and check out our Facebook page. It has our podcast link, YouTube link, and you definitely want to subscribe to our YouTube link because we are going to be giving away a lot of cool stuff soon. And please get out and check out Ronin. Pick up this debut album. You will not be disappointed. Support this band. Give them 15 minutes of your time, folks. Listen to a couple of songs. You will be hooked on them. So Chris and Jack, thank you so much for the interview, and I wish you guys nothing but the best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Really appreciate it. Help spread the word.
You're a great interview, by the way.
Haha, thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
You're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.